I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. That's what everybody says. It is a Tuesday morning here in New York City, and I'm looking over at Andrew Quo, and he has a heaping pile of cold cuts in front of him. What are you eating today, Andrew?
Oh man, depends on what part of America you're from, but where I'm from, we call this a sub sandwich. It's piled with all the gabagools, the light pink gabagool, the dark red gabagool, some lettuce, tomato, vinegar, salt, pepperoncinis. Man, only the best.
Wait.
Only the best.
You're a sub guy? I thought you were a hero guy.
I say subs. I also say hero. I'm not going to try to discriminate. Language is an open-ended playing field. But like, what do you say when you roll up to your local delicatessen?
Give me a hoagie.
A hoagie? Wow.
I don't use hoagie. Hoagie is Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, that's some Wawa stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that's... Yeah, my dad would say hoagie sometimes. He would say subs also.
I love them all.
What about grinder? Is that Midwest?
I love in Providence, we used to call them grinders, for sure. Italian grinder. But much like the hotly debated meat pie, Jamaican meat patty, do you toast and melt cheese on your grinder?
Now you're just trying to get us into new parms that haven't been discovered yet.
No, it's not deep fried. There's no tomato sauce. It's just melted moot.
On a roast beef, yeah, I think so. Otherwise, you're just going Quiznos on me.
I mean, it's a very popular move. There's a whole failed food chain or chain restaurant. The melted cheese food chain. I don't know, man. When's the last time you had a hoagie?
Is that what the difference is? Is that it's warmed? I feel like
they're all
this
the
is
same.
very arbitrary.
They're all the same. I believe you can have a warm a toasted sub, right?
So I'm on the Quiznos website. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to find a Quiznos. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing that some still exist.
Oh yeah, for sure. They tried in New York, but they closed most of them down. But they're still around, right? They were not.
From what I can tell, and again, I'm not sure this is accurate. I'm looking at their website, and I see Denver, Thornton, Colorado, Denver, Littleton, Colorado, Broomfield, Colorado, Denver, Brighton, Colorado.
It's Quiznos from Rado.
Maybe that's just what's coming up. Is there one in the airport in D.C., Maryland, Newark?
Founded
I don't know.
in Denver,
Apparently
Colorado,
they still exist.
1981. Headquarters in Denver, Colorado. There you go.
There appears to be one in the closest one to us, maybe in Orange, Connecticut. If we really want to take like a Cookies Hoops field trip and get to Crossroads Plaza at 263 Boston Post Road.
Wow. I don't know.
Is it worth it to get out there and have ourselves a hickory smoked burnt ends 380 to 1100 calorie hero?
I don't know, man. I had a bite of Quiznos once. It was not my favorite thing. I never went back to get my own. But
what about the traditional? It has it all. Black Angus steak, oven roasted turkey breast, smoked ham, melted cheddar, fresh lettuce, and tomatoes.
Steak and turkey?
Apparently so, yeah.
It's like
with creamy ranch dressing, served toasted.
This seems for a certain clientele who has more of a lust for life than I do. Which is crazy to say because one piece of gabagool...
Because you have a lust for life,
right,
for sure.
And one piece of gabagool has more than just turkey and steak in it, for sure. But that's a lot of conflicting flavors. At that point, turkeys just kind of taste like nothing, right? Steak just overpowers any sort of turkey you could possibly put on there.
It's also weird that they call that a traditional. Yeah, let me get the classic.
The number one, what is that? A steak, roast beef, turkey, and chicken. And you're like, oh, amazing.
If we want to get to that Quiznos, yeah, everyone, all the ones in New York are permanently closed.
Weren't
Sad.
good.
Very sad. Very sad. If we want to get to Boston Post Road, that will take us roughly an hour and a half. We could have it. We
That's
could have
not
a traditional Quiznos in only 90 minutes from now. That is a small price to pay.
What's your strategy when you go into a sandwich spot and they have 10 sandwiches and you order by number? Are you the classic guy, or do you veer towards the end of it where you get kind of strange like vegan options and like maybe something in a can like a sardine sandwich? Like, what's your strategy?
I'm a traditionalist. I will very frequently, if given the opportunity, go for the Godfather.
The number one.
Well, not necessarily the number one. I love a good Godfather though.
Is it number 3 or 4?
Yeah, it's not. It's upper end. To me, if you look at like a batting order, the Godfather is like always like 3 or 4, maybe 5. It's right there in Murderer's Row.
Not anymore. Not in 2022 sabermetrics baseball, but I know what you mean. Aaron Judge is hitting 2 now, man. But I hear you. The Godfather is kind of like the classic, but if you have more of a lust for life, and that's not a number one. You can't just reveal that with number one. You got to ease people into the Godfather.
So what's the number one? Is that just like a turkey and Swiss? Is that a number one?
No, I believe that to be number 6 or 7. Turkey always comes later, even though it is kind of my go-to. I think number 1 would be like a classic Italian combo.
But the classic Italian combo is kind of the Godfather, though.
Yeah, when I picture the Godfather, I picture something heftier than like the Subway Italian combo. But
yeah, I mean, this is what. There's so much ambiguity with this stuff.
Why did you bring up my lunch?
Well, I was thinking about cold cuts the other day when I was in a supermarket, and I saw people lined up to get cold cuts, and there was a generational schism where the folks who wanted to get Boar's Head were clearly in their golden years. Is it a generational split? Do young people go out and buy cold cuts, hams, mortadels, some provolone cheese for making sandwiches at home, or is that era over?
I think that era is over. I don't buy cold cuts, and I'm washed. Trust, but like, I stopped eating. Cold cuts are the most delicious things ever. Like they are. You get a couple slices of gabagool, and like you're good to go. But I stopped eating them because they're just not good for me, and they're a pain in the ass to make at home. Like you got to get good bread, you got to get fresh vegetables, all that stuff. It's a lot of work, man.
So this is where I was curious about, is the lack of popularity of cold cuts among younger generations. Is that due to scientific advances in the sandwich making industry itself, where there's now an expectation that your sandwich will not have 2 slabs of Wonder Bread with some Hellmann's slathered on it and a couple slices of American cheese and I don't know, Boar's Head ham? Is that the problem here?
In New York, it certainly may be, or in certain parts of New York. But I just think it fell out of style, and also I think it got more expensive. Like I was looking at the prepackaged Applebee's turkey, the organic one. Like I think it's like 1/3 of a pound, or maybe close to half. It's like 1/3 of a pound. It's $10. That's crazy, man. I mean, Boar's Head is now cheap, right? It was the Cadillac of gabagools for generations, but now you see that Boar's Head logo, and you're like, I'm not so sure.
It's the point that I was going to make was people still do buy meats and cheeses, but they don't make them for sandwiches, really.
Is it just like a charcuterie vibe?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's what's changed. Younger people will go and buy a nice little fist of cheese or slices of capicola or something like that. But they aren't doing the boar's head.
Like the party platters. Like, are people still making 7-foot subs? I hope so.
Well, I mean, shout out to our man Lucian, whose Mobadanga tournament had a whole bunch of sandwiches from DeFonte's, which is a famous hero spot in Red Hook, which has hours that are catered towards the dock workers around there. And they had some of the ones with like the spicy broccoli rabe. They were bangers, man. DeFonte's makes good. They make very good sandwiches. I will vouch for them. But last time I went, it was in the summer, and they don't really have a place to eat inside. And you could go over by the water, or go over by like where IKEA is and the Statue of Liberty. Like, there are places we could go and eat, but it was like 100 degrees out.
Yeah.
So I'm there holding an Italian special, The Godfather.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do I do? I can't be eating this out in 100 degrees. So I like ate it in my car like an animal. So I felt
Is there a
disgraced.
sink in your car? What the fuck? How did you install that sink in your car?
I was like, this defeated the whole purpose. I'm going to get this great sandwich in Red Hook, and I just like ate it as if I was van lifing.
We could be telling on ourselves a little bit by not being consuming like a sub a day, because I think they're still very popular, but like I just haven't done it in almost a decade. I tried that one spot on Orchard Street when it opened up, that Italian grocery store, and it was cool. Like, this was before inflation, but I was like out of there with a number one for like $18.
Are you talking about Regina's?
Yeah, I know. All respect to Regina's, and serving food is expensive. Totally, I was not bummed on the price, but I was like, this is what it should cost, and this is not going to be an everyday thing for me. And I haven't had one of those sandwiches in years.
Every now and then I'll get like the classic bodega hero.
Hell yeah.
The spongy bread.
Yep.
Boar's head cold cuts for sure. Tomato that has been refrigerated.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty mid, but also deeply edible.
Oh yeah, I got no problems with that.
Anyway, I was just thinking cold cuts are generational, and I was wondering what you thought, and it seems we've come to the same conclusion.
They're evergreen.
Younger people have just moved on past the Boar's Head.
Yo, my friend used to have a studio across from the Boar's Head factory in Bushwick, and there was a certain day they did the curing, where they cooked everything and like made it ready, and the whole block smelled like ham, but that like the square ham with the rounded corners. That's what it smelled like.
Yeah. I remember my buddy had a bar called Lulu's, Tutu's, that was right across the street from it as well.
Oh yeah. Oh okay. Yeah. I went to that bar then. Yeah. What? Yo, the same friend of mine used to have a studio in Providence, and the ground floor of that studio building is where one of the few locations they made the Colonel's secret spice blend. It was crazy, man. So the whole place smelled like KFC, and it was like chained up. It wasn't like under lock and key. You can kind of see what was happening. There was like a dust of like rose-colored. There was like a tint of rose-colored dust in the air at certain times in the week, and it was delicious smelling. People have complained in New York City about the smell of Subway and the baking of the bread in the morning. And I've heard some people, when this was happening years ago, people were like, oh, what's so bad about baking bread? Like, this is one of the great smells in civilization. But then the Subways, when they bake the bread, it just smells sour. It just smells like a distinct right edge corner of sour. It's not like this beautiful yeasty kind of like French bakery. It's not Christmas, man.
Oh no, I spent a lot of time in an apartment right above a Subway, and that sucked. And it was even worse because the Subway moved in after them. So it went from a place that we would just normally hang out in to all of a sudden that that rank sort of bilious. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Billowing?
No, bilious, like full of bile. Is that the right word? That's the word I'm thinking of.
I don't read, so okay. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, who is reading these days outside of the joy of basketball? I know Kanye isn't, and I'm glad that someone who shares our opinion on the written word is spoken up.
I mean, Kanye is not only treating his mind right by not injecting it with all these awful things that you can read, he's also not eating Brussels sprouts, so there's more Brussels sprouts for everybody. It is an amazing, gregarious thing Kanye is doing.
How are people responding to it, Andrew? Do they like what they're hearing?
It is like a mixture of being condescending in a classist way, in an intellectual way, in a racist way, in a Twitter way. It is the takes were raining down on this idea that just read a book. You're a well-rounded person if you do this, and read. And I was thinking, like, why do people think reading is a catch-all for something good? Like, if I say something dumb and someone said something to me like, why don't you go read a book? I'm like, okay, The Art of the Deal, how's that? It's like, well, don't read that. I'm like, what about Star Wars, The Clone Wars? Like, well, don't read that. Like, what about To Kill a Mockingbird? It's like, no, you can't read that. I'm like, then tell me what book to read. It's like Nate Silver's book.
So I'm going to go on Facebook and I'm going to read some of these posts that the boomers are passing around. No. That's bad reading. The good reading is the things that I think you should read. But those toxic misinformation posts that are floating around Facebook and poisoning Nana, don't read that, Kanye. That's bad stuff. What about Hitler's book? No, Kanye, no.
I mean, I'm going to the New York Times bestseller list right now, right? It's like, go read the book. I'm like, okay, Stephen King fairy tale, J.D. Robb Desperation in Death, Verity, Colleen Hoover. Like, what if I read all these books? Would I be a better person? I'm glad my mom died by that child actor. Like, Jared Kushner's book is number 3. I'm reading that.
Kanye, put down the copy of Mein Kampf. It's not. Don't do it. Don't do it. I was lying about the reading. Pick up The Joy of Basketball.
It's a book, right? Yeah, I don't enjoy reading, and I know what people mean, right? Like, there is a certain kind of meditative quality to sitting down with a book, and it's not just what's in the book. The process of reading a book is like exudes or develops patience, develops kind of like different kind of visualizations and thought processes that not reading a book can't do. I don't really care about any of that stuff. I'm okay with being impatient, and I'm okay with being a visual person.
Well, I also think Kanye clearly reads all the time. He's on Twitter. Like, he reads incessantly. Are people suggesting that they have gotten the bulk of their information about the world through reading books? Because I would say bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I read a book. It's called The Joy of Basketball. It made me a much smarter fan and better looking and more attractive to other people. Yeah, that's one book. But for the most part, what did you learn from books?
Nothing, except for The Joy of Basketball, where I learned everything. But I was thinking about, like, when people were like hand drawing manuscripts to candlelight, and they were in the royal family, being assassinated while on the loo, reading these handwritten books, and I was like, what happens when someone introduces the printing press? Like, no, that's not a real book. You can't read those. Everyone can get those. The real books are the ones that me and my friends have. Like, try reading one of those. And every time there's a new technological jump, like, there was a viral video that keeps on popping up of this woman talking about dating. And she's like, you guys think you're so smart, but how do you spell Pharaoh? What does a government agency do? Name me, like, anything interesting outside of just scrolling on your app. And I was like, that's not really fair. I mean, she's creating content on the app. I learn a ton of stuff on Twitter, and I get a lot more dumb if I ever try to read the Jared Kushner book.
Well, my point is just that I think the vast majority of people now gets their information and learns about things on the internet and does not learn them from books. Sure, you have people who maybe read about World War II in books, or you read about historical sagas and things like that. But the average amount of information that we're ingesting, not even the average, the overwhelming amount, is just through the internet, through reading articles, like reading the New Yorker, reading the New York Times, reading various outlets that are available on your phone. Like the idea that if it's in book form, other than the joy of basketball, that there's a virtuousness to it and like a knowledge and insight that's inherently in that format is just nonsensical. It's like, listen to an album. Yeah, you're here with your MP3s, but like pick up some vinyl and listen to that, and then get back to me, idiot.
Remember when people, it's like, you can't read magazines, that's junk. I'm like, all right. What about the New Yorker? It's like, well, no, if it's a magazine, it's junk. But it's an excerpt from a book that's sitting right there. It's just like, nope, junk. And we're just talking about context in different ways to make ourselves feel better. But I was reading a pretty highfalutin magazine the other day, and I hadn't picked up a magazine in quite a while. And I looked at it, and I couldn't even absorb it because all the images looked like they were not crisp. And I was like, I know this is kind of a high-res image because it's 300 DPI for print, but like, this looks terrible. I need this backlit on a laptop in a dark room. And so my eyes visually couldn't even kind of stay engaged with a printed page, unless it's a joy of basketball and fireworks.
Well, that's because it's so beautiful and well written.
That's right.
That your eyes kind of adjust to it. That's for sure.
That's right.
So what else is going on in this crazy mixed up world? Oh, New York City, the city that sleeps.
Oh,
There's
wow.
a recent article where a writer from the Times went out at night to see if indeed this is still the sleepless city. Yeah. And I guess she found out that it's not, something that we've been talking about for a while.
Yeah.
And there are some different motivations for it, some of which is the fact that during the pandemic, things closed much, much earlier, if not entirely, and rolling them back into existence, some found they just didn't need to be open 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. I ask you this, Andrew Quo. Is this now the city that sleeps?
Now that I'm a human who sleeps more, yeah, good. I used to like hang out with, and you did too, hang out with a lot of people who worked in nightlife. And going to Veselka in my 20s was a thing, like at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. maybe. Seeing the switch over from like night people to morning people was a regular thing. Wohop, Noodletown, all these places that are famously 24 hours were named in this article as no longer, right? Like Wohop closes when dinner service is done. I mean, good, right? Like, we don't need it to be 24 hours.
It's hard to say, right? Because if you are someone who works a night shift somewhere, I feel like you should be able to get a meal. If you work at a bar, I think you should be able to leave work and go get a nice pile of delicious noodles. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, people working those late shifts at restaurants, that's not a very
brutal,
appealing like C shift to have on weekends, especially when people are drinking and hanging out. So I can see it both ways. Mm-hmm. I will say I do think more restaurants should serve until midnight. I don't know about the necessity of places that like stay open until 5. I think it's cool that there's diners and they exist and they always have, but like, is there really a need for like a lot of places open till 5? Probably not.
I mean, now that there's no like huge club scene on the west side or even downtown, I think that clientele kind of trickled away. And this is a debate between doing capitalism or doing culture, right? if you're the owner of Veselka and you stay up all night, you pay your staff, they're kind of miserable. But if it's brisk and you're making money, they're compensated, right? They go home and they're like, I made great money tonight. My day ends at 8 a.m. But I made enough money to pay my rent, all good. As soon as you stop making money and the clientele doesn't come in, then you're like, it's not worth it. And those few people who are like, but 24 hours Veselka is a culture, be like, well, do culture on your own time because we're losing money and we can't stay in business this way, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, if it's profitable and the workers there want those shifts because they make money and there's a clientele that wants to go there and eat, like, it all works. But once one of those things falls out of the equation where it's like, I don't want to work this fucking shift, then that's bad for workers. If a restaurant's like, well, what's the point in being open? We're not making that much money, and it just means that we have to clean up later and that our employees have to work until 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Then the whole thing crumbles.
Yeah.
But it is definitely true for a while that places in New York were closing egregiously early. I think some of that has changed, but we were talking about Frenchette before. I think for a while it was closing at 9 p.m. Like, come on, that's just unreasonable. Like that's a joke.
But they have crunch numbers. There's a reason for it, right? They're not a place like a good Christmas restaurant is so dialed in that they can be like, between the hours of 9 and 10 of our kitchen being open, we're losing more money than if we would just close it. Like, they've done it all.
Oh, that's true. And I think they have actually changed their hours. I think now they're open
because the clientele came back, right?
Noon to 10, yeah. And then noon to 10.
The demand came back.
Yeah. But this was also both of those. This was also a pandemic thing as well.
For sure.
It was like people just trying to recalibrate their business numbers definitely. And I don't think we've gotten over that. I do think people are hanging out later than they were a couple of years ago.
Definitely.
I think people were really attuned to going to bed early, waking up early, not being out late. There was that period of time when if you went to a bar, they wouldn't like serve you after 9 and they had to be closed by 10. That spawned all those jokes about, well, yeah, of course, COVID doesn't get you until midnight, all those kind of things, because it was weird and just seemed designed to kind of cripple restaurants and bars without giving them any help.
Yeah.
But also it was like a morally judgmental approach that like, well, if you guys hang out late, you're going to give each other COVID. Yeah. If you hang out early, you won't. But I think that did change sort of the culture of going out. But now I feel like people are out later. I mean, this last weekend, if you were around the city at all, it was so jammed. It was just insane how many people were out like on this Friday and Saturday.
It was great weather, and the post kind of fever pitch of Fashion Week and Art Week, when that dies down, like I feel like it's like after rain, all the mushrooms pop up, right? And it was jammed. And I mean, to your point about like demonizing maybe a certain hour of day, whether that actually being about like the Bible or Catholicism or whatever. But, like Chinatown doesn't have a nightlife. Chinese people kind of, the bar scene isn't as prevalent in that culture. So Chinatown kind of shuts down earlier than, let's say, like the East Village. But on paper, spreading out when we hang out during a pandemic makes more sense, right? Like, everyone takes shifts. Like, okay, you're a 4 to 7 a.m. shift. Do your socializing and mental wellness then. You're a 1 to 2 p.m. But, like, human nature kind of drives a different thing where, like, most people want to do the same things at the same time. It's traffic. It's people who honk in traffic. Like, you are the traffic. So
that could be a good observation, though, that as New York has become more homogenous and there are less people who are involved in like trades that maybe require you to stay out at late or just live by different schedules because they're odd people, that the sort of 9 to 5 culture of New York has made the restaurants and bars cater to that schedule as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how working from home would affect that, but maybe working from home really pushes people to go out at like 6 o'clock. Where it's like, okay, I'm done with work. The Zooms are over. Let's go out and grab some dinner.
Right.
Maybe it just naturally encourages people, and as definitely did during COVID, to hang out earlier in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my biorhythms have always been weird. Like, I'm a night person for sure, but I don't know many other night people, and I get it. Like, the sun is there for a reason. But like, I don't know. Are you ready to give your boy Mayor Adams credit? Because if people are going out later, he is the nightlife mayor. Like, is this chicken or the egg? A vegan egg.
Yeah, not sure I can credit our mayor, but it's theoretically possible. He's doing such a great job. He's really nailing it out there.
Yeah.
So Mayor Adams, he won't sleep. The city does sleep. Kanye doesn't read books. Young people don't eat cold cuts. So where are we left with? We're left with regurgitating, relitigating podcast past. That will never happen in Cookies Hoops because we're always right.
Right.
But now, everyone's really into revisiting Serial, the crime podcast that launched a million crime podcast ships across the sea. Sarah Koenig's...
Koenig. I think it's
Koenig's...
Koenig.
Whatever the case. Sarah. Let's just say we know her.
S-Dog.
Sarah of MailChimp fame.
Mm-hmm.
And so yesterday it was announced that the, I guess, protagonist, antagonist of her story, the murder suspect of Serial, Adnan Syed, was released from prison, and he's going to have a new trial.
Maybe.
They can try him again if they want to.
Yes.
What did you think of his innocence during the show? Because I listened to that podcast and I was like, this guy is clearly guilty. Because even though she always puts suspicion elsewhere, even though she seems to believe in this guy's innocence, the only thing that's presented as plausible during that podcast is really that he did it.
Mm-hmm. Amazing podcast, right? Like, people are like, I don't listen to podcasts. I'm like, you should hear Serial because it was that amazing. I was so into the crescendo of that first season because Sarah Koenig does the not journalistic thing where she kind of like, okay, I'm kind of done, and I know you're all asking, do I think he did it? And she says, I think he did it, which is just like such a shocking thing to hear, in my opinion. Like, I was just really into all the shifting of kind of roles that she has in it because she also cares about these families, and it was great. And I don't think he did not do it, but there was not the reason why it was gripping because it was very unclear. And in my opinion, I don't love the justice system. If there's any doubt like that, I would say you cannot lock him up. There was too much doubt in there where I'm like, I think he probably did it, but that's not enough to take away someone's freedom. Like, it's really slippery, right? And he gets released yesterday on a technicality or a huge deal. Prosecution did not bring certain evidence to light. But they're not always going to do that anyway. So it was a weird rule-based judgment on something that I felt like was very vague.
So my takeaway from the podcast, which obviously I listened to at the time and have not revisited, but it was,
the other seasons are great. Yeah.
But as you said, the season one, that was like a real cultural moment.
For sure.
It dropped during the holidays. Everyone was at home listening to Serial religiously. I can't remember if it dropped all at once or daily or
it was weekly.
How it was weekly. Yeah. I'd started it late and then I kind of binged it and caught up. But if I remember correctly, my takeaway was just that Adnan was the major suspect. He had dated the murder victim off and on. He did not have a credible alibi. There were not other suspects. And his
There were
boy,
other suspects, though, right?
but they never really mentioned who they were. They always kind of refuted them.
Her boss was the number one suspect other than him, right?
I don't even really remember if they made a good case that anyone else did it. There was like a mention of like a vagrant who's around. To me, when I listened to it, I'm getting my major point. What I'm getting to is that like I didn't think they laid out a good, credible case that it wasn't him. He didn't have a good alibi. His friend said that he did it and helped them bury the body, and that Adnan admitted it. And they did not really present a compelling case for another suspect.
Wait, hold on. Let me refute that for a second. Even in a broad sense, this was a hit podcast where everyone was arguing about stuff. Of course she presented evidence to the contrary, which was what made it so fascinating and addictive, right? It was so vague that we were like, what the hell is going on for week after week?
People definitely debated it, and people listened to it and thought he was innocent. I'm saying my takeaway from it was that like he was just clearly guilty from how it had been laid out, and that ambiguity that you're talking about was kind of phony because they just didn't present an alibi for him that was good. They didn't present like his friend said he did it, and that there wasn't another credible suspect. But what I'm getting to here, but what I'm getting here to is they didn't present a good case for someone else. They talked about other people, but they didn't present a good case. But my thing is that
okay, yeah. No, I'm with you.
But what I'm saying is that's my takeaway. I'm not
go
even
on.
arguing with you. I'm saying, but it does show you though that like, if the cops held evidence back, we wouldn't have that. If the cops manipulated his friend into a confession or into, pointing the finger at Adnan because of like drug charges or something like that, we now have, I think, a different view of law enforcement, and we always viewed them with skepticism. But I feel like the last few years have really pulled back the veil from a public consensus that like cops lie incessantly, constantly. They cannot be trusted in any way, shape, or form. Again, I think this is something we knew, but it's just become such a part of our cultural dialogue that like all that stuff on the pod that came from the police now just feels flimsy. And you're like, if you could convince me, who is very skeptical of police, that this guy did it based on things that the cops said, well, then you could convince anybody of that.
Yeah, and there's and we can throw prosecutors into that lump too, or all kinds of lawyers.
Exactly. It's like so my point is like I was convinced that he was guilty, but at this point I'm like, but that was based on what cops said. That was based on what prosecutors said. So I don't even believe that he's necessarily guilty anymore because I don't trust anything that was even said or provided as evidence at this point.
I mean, I love the second season of Serial so much about Bergdahl, the military guy who abandoned his post. I thought that was so great because it kind of reflected back on the first season. I'm obsessed with one or two stories, and I always bring it back to the same one or two stories. But like, the first season of Serial reminded me of Zodiac, where it was like we were wandering through all these legal systems and all these human discussions about the edges and the fringes of where people go in their lives. And it was so fascinating to me, or I loved it so much because it wasn't about like, did he do it or did he not? I didn't care. And that was kind of Sarah Koenig's whole ending statement. She was like, it doesn't matter what I think. This story is interesting because what you think doesn't matter. What is the truth, right? And she was like, I'm not sure we'll ever know the truth, but what is truth? Whatever. It gets kind of like mushy in that regard. And he's out of jail. But what does that prove, right? And there's a lot. I love the way we decide things, and then science and technology evolve, and then we're like, oh, there's DNA now. There's now body cameras. Or marijuana is legal because we've done science on it and it's harmless. So therefore, all these people Kamala Harris threw in jail are no longer criminals. I'm like, this is a wild world that we live in, man. And I love the visceral quality of serial where it's like someone was murdered, someone died at the hands of someone else. We're here to find out who did it, and we'll never find out who did it.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point, and it's that him being in jail doesn't prove his guilt, and him being released now doesn't prove his innocence.
Right.
Maybe we will find out via DNA testing. Maybe they'll discover that it was someone else. Those things are possible. We could find out the truth. Like,
Yep.
we may not, but we could.
Or we have the truth. Like, we have it, but we just don't know it, right?
Oh, I just mean we could have definitive proof. I mean, he could say, actually, I did it.
Oh,
My
right.
bust.
But
I
also
should've done that.
there's so many examples of that where someone's like, there's documentaries making a murderer, right? There's like, I did it, and they're like, there's a confession. It's like, oh, he didn't do it. He just said those words because you guys have destroyed his brain.
Yeah. I mean, one of my buddies who grew up in New York was amongst the suspects for like the Central Park 5.
Oh, dude.
And he was he had been brought in earlier that night by the cops with his friends, and he was playing in the park.
Jesus.
And was interrogated and let go. And then later another group came in, and of course that saga goes from there.
Jesus. Yeah.
And I remember him saying to me, he's like, if I was one of those, then like that was one of that group who they'd really decided we're pinning it on these lads. He's like, I would have been in the same boat. I would have gone to prison.
Yeah.
And it's just like, to your point, even confessions aren't real. But I mean, there is still at least a way where you could say the truth is knowable, right?
Maybe so. Yeah.
But there are so many variables, right, that people will never even believe it. I remember when I was interviewing Big Lurch, and I don't know if you remember him, but he was like 6'8" rapper, originally from Texas. In LA, he was doing he was smoking dust, like Sherm sticks, flipped out, beat his roommate's girlfriend to death, like ripped her apart, was walking naked down the street with like parts of her like body and like lungs hanging out of his mouth. Sorry, this is very graphic. I've read all the court transcripts. He was arrested, sent to jail. And the victim's mother is like, I think he was set up. I'm like, what do you mean? He was naked walking down the street with parts of her body like hanging out of his mouth. She's like, no, I think this was like over drugs and like gangs, and that this had nothing to do with him or her. I'm like, I hear you, maybe that's easier than just believing in how arbitrary and cruel and awful this is.
Yeah.
That there's like a deeper, darker conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
Then, wow, all these people's lives are ruined over nothing. Your daughter's gone, this guy's in prison, there was no rhyme or reason, it's just some fucked up shit that happened. Instead, it's easier to have a conspiracy. It's easier to have an untold truth.
Well, this like changes the course of human history sometimes, right? Like I think of like Emmett Till, and they're like, should we prosecute? What's the right word? Should the woman who lied about Emmett Till whistling at her be held accountable? She's still alive. Like, what do we do with her? And the answer is nothing. And the lie that she told set not only a crime in action, but like the whole direction of our country, right? And
But do you do nothing? I don't know.
I don't know.
If someone lies about that and it was 5 years ago, does that make it different than if it was 50 years ago? I don't know.
I don't know. Like, they find like Nazis, old Nazis around sometimes, and I'm like, this is a difficult ethical discussion. Not that they're bad people. Of course they did awful things, but like, what do they owe society, right? What is punishment? All these things. That's the question I'm asking. Like,
I mean, I guess there's also a fine line, right? Is there punitive accountability, or are we saying that all incarceration is just preventative? You're like, okay, we're going to put you in jail so you can't hurt other people. It's like, well, this 85-year-old, 95-year-old Nazi probably is not going to be committing any more war crimes.
right.
Like, that's not going to happen. But doesn't he hold some accountability for his crimes? Is there a term? Is there an expiration date on like mass murder? And like, if you talk to Israel and the people who chase Nazis, the answer is definitively not.
Right. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's weird. And what did they do? Were they in the room? Were they complicit? Were they just German? And like, were they part of the government? It's wild. I don't know. Like, I don't know. And I see the news of Adnan getting out of prison, and I was kind of like pleased with that news. I thought there was some sort of justice, only because it was like, it was really confusing and hazy, and there was new evidence, and the new evidence at the very least would allow for another trial, and it might or might not happen. I think it probably will, and his family and the victim's family will have to go through these awful things played out again in a courtroom. But at the very least, he deserves another trial. Like, I think people should be tried forever, right? If we have the patience and the resources, like, it shouldn't just be like, hey, you can't appeal this. I'm like, you should be able to appeal forever. You know, like, and if each time the appeal is like, no, not this time, then fair enough. But if one or two of those times, like, I have doubts about this, I'm like, that's enough.
Yeah, I mean, these are all tough questions, right? Because you have a lot of incarcerated people who have nothing to do but file appeals. Like, all right,
Good.
Incoming.
Yeah.
I don't really have a problem with that, other than it, like, tying up the legal system
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
on. But
the resources. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we have a clear epidemic in our country of over incarceration. So generally speaking, the more that people can appeal to get out of jail, I'm in favor of. You know, we talk about, like, oh my God, what they're doing to Brittany Griner is so insane. 5 years
right.
for like having a vape pen. I'm like,
Kamala Harris.
like, wait a minute, we have people like on a third strike, like marijuana possession and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? And for, you know, Joe Biden, we talked about this a couple episodes. We don't need to rehash the whole thing, but like, Joe Biden could just say, hey, if you got put into jail for the pot, you're out of here. Go on and live your life. So yeah, I mean, the thing with Adnan, like, whether he's guilty or innocent, if he had a terrible lawyer and the prosecution withheld evidence, then he deserves new trial. It's that simple. Like, whether he's guilty or innocent, I don't know, but you can't be withholding evidence that there was like a serial rapist killer in the area and the woman's car was found next to his relative's house. Like,
Right.
yeah, you can't be hiding that from the defense. That's just bullshit.
Yeah. How do you make a good argument with ethically? How do you advocate for someone ethically with information that may not be to their benefit? And this is the whole staircase thing, right? I love that that reenactment, the dramatization of that whole trial on HBO. And the lawyer was just like, you probably did it, but what if you were sleepwalking? Let's get a sleepwalking expert in here. You know, like, trying everything, and you know, and that's when we get back to what is the motivations of everybody involved. And the lawyer's motivation is not only to do a good job, but like financial, reputation, like all these things, business, all these things go into play. And it is an amazing thing to watch and listen to in art and documentaries and true crime stuff. But I stopped listening to all that true crime podcasting because it just left me kind of like cynical and a bleak feeling.
Yeah, I feel like I get put in a weird headspace when I go on Forensic Files binges.
Yeah.
Or I don't really listen to true podcasts, but I don't like watching First 48, things like that.
Yeah.
Like that one in particular. Forensic Files, there's like a sort of creepy nostalgia to them with the guy's voice, and they're short, and the stories are generally from a long time ago.
Yeah. They're ghost stories.
They're ghost stories, and also you do know that they're going to find out who did it.
Sure.
That there's the happiest ending you could get. But there's like as you said, it's a ghost story. It's this creepy voice.
Yeah.
On a cold Thursday night, she left the gas station for her
It's
last
amazing stuff, right?
Like this, the narrative arc, they just nailed the whole vibe of that show. And it's got that weird sound in the same way that Law and Order does the doom doom. It has this like screech that comes every now and then in Forensic Files, and it sometimes sounds like when you put your straw into like a plastic coffee lid, and it's like
yeah. It's so
a really scary noise. I don't know what it is. It's like a screaming bark door opening.
In my house, we're heavy TV watchers, and after dinner's done, it's like, what are we gonna watch tonight? We have a few hours, and more as I get older, I make this stupid request. It's like, I want to watch something where no one dies. Like, can we watch something where no one's like stalked and murdered, or there's some sort of like plot element that involves death? I just don't want to watch someone die before I go to sleep tonight. And it's harder to find than it may seem. I mean, I love basketball. I love sports. And this is one of the many reasons I'm into the NBA. But one of the reasons it's like, it doesn't involve this like dark part of humanity that some of these stories do. Like Game of Thrones, I'm down. I'm watching that. It's all about people plotting to murder each other. And I'm like, yo, this doesn't make me a better, sort of like reading a book. It doesn't make me a better person. But you know what I mean? It's just like, sometimes I just don't want to watch someone be like, okay, they found her in a barrel. And I'm like, I'm sure they did, but I
agree.
wish...
I agree. I'm with that. I'm saying Forensic Files I enjoy, but if I watch a funeral, I'm like, all right, what am I doing? Like, this isn't me. I'm not like Mr. Sits Around listening about abductions. It's not my vibe. But First 48 is so bleak, and I can't watch it without getting very sad and thinking about how fucked up America is.
Or
you watch it,
yeah.
and it's basically, for those who haven't seen it, it's cops basically.
Yeah.
It's like the classic Fox show, but it's okay. These guys are investigating a murder, and you meet the cops, and you see them chasing down leads. They generally find a suspect, and then they interrogate them. And sometimes the suspects ask for a lawyer. Sometimes they confess. And all that I always take away from it is like the sadness of everyone's life involved in this, not including the cops. Just the people who are committing crimes, the people who are victim of crimes, the people who are just in that entire environment. And it reminds me of what I was talking about in the Big Lurch story. Mm-hmm. It's just like, hey, here's poverty. Here are the issues that are endemic to poverty, and just watching it unfold until someone gets like stabbed to death over a bag of Doritos. And you're like,
right.
This isn't entertainment. This is like a condemnation of America.
And strategic, right? Yeah.
And then at the end, when the last thing I was going to say was at the end, when they get the confession, I'm always there like, don't confess, ask for a lawyer, because like their circumstances are so awful that even if they've committed something that's wretched, I'm just like, don't let the cops win. Like the person's already dead. This is already such a tragedy and awful, and an indictment of America. Like, I don't even care if you go to prison. Of course, I think that people should have accountability for what they do, but in the context of that show, I can't like even root for the cops by the end, because everything is so terrible and cynical.
And to that point, I agree. And to that point, I'm like, we shouldn't take Kanye's quote about books literally. Or we can, but we shouldn't. I mean, he might have meant it literally, but we shouldn't interpret it literally. And what he's saying is like, there's a lot going out there, and selective attention could work to your benefit. And what I mean by that is, like, if you just listen to the top podcasts, a lot of them are true crime, and if you engaged in like a lot of the things on TV, you would think America's a very dangerous place, and parts of it are. But like, if, for example, if you subscribe to Patch and you look through a zip code that is maybe a not wealthy zip code, and you see all these crimes, and you're like, that's a dangerous neighborhood. We need to have policies to make it not dangerous. But that's kind of misleading because there's a higher population there. There's poverty. There's reason why all this stuff is reported. I think there's a kind of an underhanded motivation there. It's like, I think it's as easy to frame a poor neighborhood as being dangerous as it to frame it as having the best food, right? It's like, go to the poor neighborhoods, they have the best food. Don't go to the poor neighborhoods because there's murders. I'm like, don't read those books. Don't read books. And I think when I avoid things like real horror or crime or these Netflix documentaries about what really happened with this brutal murder, I'm just like, my view of the world is noticeably different.
I mean, that makes sense to me. Like, I just feel like those apps that you're describing, like, what's it called, Citizen or whatever?
Sure. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, in a densely populated neighborhood where people are on their phones, where 20 different people hear the same firework, where
Right.
100 people hear the same person yelling outside, and then everyone's reporting it simultaneously.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's going to seem like there's more going on. It's population density. This goes down to like electoral maps, right?
Right.
Where someone will say, look at this wide swath of red. And you're like, yeah, but Wyoming has less people than, like, I don't know, East Williamsburg or some shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
yeah, but like, land doesn't vote, dog.
Yeah.
Look how little crime there is here. I'm like, yeah, that's because 6 people live there.
Yeah. And like, drug dealing gangs fight and try to lobby for position, but like, they're not going to mess with you. I always thought this was like a it was like a bad reading of the situation when somebody not from New York, for example, was like, but there's drug dealers there. Why would I live there? It's dangerous. I'm like, no, they don't want trouble at all. When you walk by, like, they don't want any sort of trouble because they don't want to draw attention to themselves. They argue amongst themselves, but they don't really want to mess with you. If you'd like some of their products, they would gladly sell them to you, but they're not like in it to mug you. They don't want any of that, right? They're kind of like a version of the Hell's Angels. Like, they kind of maintain a level of peace on the block. It's pretty fascinating to me. The Wire wasn't about conflicts between organizations and civilians. It was a conflict between organizations and organizations, and it's the same everywhere.
I was walking down, I don't know, somewhere in the Lower East Side last week. It was on a weekend too. I don't know if this was, I forget exactly where it was. Anyway, it was the Bowery area, Lower East Side, maybe East Village. And there's a guy walking there, and they're like, yo, cocaine, acid, weed, cocaine, heroin, dust. Like, whatever.
Wow, this guy's
need.
got it all. This guy's amazing. He's a Nikola Jokic of drug dealers, man.
Like, acid, Viagra,
Propecia.
Yeah, exactly.
Probes. Yeah.
Benadryl.
Yeah.
So he was doing that little whisper as he was walking by, and then he did it to me, he did it to someone else, and then he kind of was like still on the phone with somebody. He's like, yeah, I guess like his girlfriend or whatever. He's just like, yes, I'll be back in a little while. Like, yo, cocaine.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I was like, this is so sweet. He's just there like a cabbie who's there like talking to like his partner or friend or whatever while whiling away the hours, and then every now and then it's like, oh, where are we going? Okay, cool. This guy's doing the same thing and just having a totally bland, normal conversation with whoever he's wants to chat with. Meanwhile, being like, cocaine. What do you need? It was kind of sweet.
Dude, it's like, we hear the shocking news and we see the shocking footage of P&B Rock being shot in the Waffle House. Like, I wish I never saw that. I scrolled through, I saw that, sucked, ruined my whole day. And some of the reaction is like, we got to stop this violence. Who's next? I'm like, you're not next. Trust me. They don't care about you.
I mean, I saw someone on Twitter make the really good point, though. He was like, basically saying, if that was a non-famous black person, that doesn't happen in Roscoe's. He's like, if you're a non-famous white person, that doesn't happen in Roscoe's.
Yeah.
If you're a famous white person, that doesn't happen in Roscoe's.
Yeah.
He's like, but this is what happens when you're a famous black person in Roscoe's.
Yeah.
And this was a black guy saying this who is from L.A. And I thought that was like a poignant thing to take away from it.
Yeah.
It was like, I think he even said, like, if Seth Rogen goes in there or someone along those lines. Bradley Cooper's in Roscoe's, he's not getting stuck up.
No, I very much agree. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, but like, there's more of a, a lot of old heads would say like things were more real back in the day, like in the 90s gangster rap era where you had like for real stuff, man, like absolutely in LA and New York. But it seems to be just as bad now, but it is not talked about in those terms. It's almost that story kind of didn't have the gravity that I expected it to have. It's just like, well, what do you guys expect? I'm like, well, what do you mean? He doesn't deserve to get shot over sharing his location. This is ridiculous. It's like, well, he talked some smack. I'm like, who cares? Like, what do you mean he talked some smack? Like,
well, so the story that I heard, and maybe it changed, was that his girlfriend had shared the location, right?
That picture was out. Yeah.
It said, we're here, and
enjoying these waffles.
People had saw it and showed up. And like, yes, I get she could have been more cautious. That's true, right? That's true.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that she is culpable for a cold-blooded murder in a waffle restaurant.
Right.
Like, they did that.
Yeah.
She may have been reckless isn't even the right word. She may not have been like cautious enough. She was not cautious enough. But like, posting your location shouldn't be viewed as reckless.
Yeah, I agree, and
I think she made a mistake.
Yeah,
but I don't think it was even like reckless. It's just like,
did they ever find those guys?
I don't know. Yeah, but and the same thing with like Pop Smoke. It's like, oh, you posted an Instagram that showed your location, and people were able to come find you. Like, yeah, that is not cautious. That's true. But like, the people who did it are the bad guys.
Wait, allegedly in that Biggie song, that's Anthony Mason's house. Allegedly, is that how the story goes?
That's what Fat Joe says.
Right. Yeah, six man of the Knicks. Yeah.
I also never thought that story was even supposed to be real.
I never took it as truth when I heard it as a child and right up until now.
I mean, when he says that line about like the game must have got rained out or something, I was like, oh, like he put that in there to be like the story's fake because he's talking about a basketball player. He's like, oh, it was rained out or some shit. He came home early, like he came home early from the basketball game.
Maybe it was an and one king. I don't know. Street ball Rucker game.
Well, I just felt like Biggie put that in to basically be like, yeah, I'm telling you a story.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe so, but yeah, man, it's just like maybe Kanye should read a book because if we are just reading Twitter, I mean, I don't think Twitter is a hellscape. I don't think Twitter is dystopian. I think your feed could be a hellscape and your feed could be dystopian. But like, you have to mold your experience on here. And if you don't, you're going to get some insane stuff that's going to go directly to your brain.
I think the biggest issue for me personally is that when you get on really early in the morning, you wake up, you open up your phone, you go on Twitter, and you're like, kind of pissed about something immediately. Oh, yeah. You're like, what am I doing? What am I doing? They're going after my man Ben Simmons again. He's trending for the 75th consecutive day. God damn it. Why do I have to start my day like this?
I do this stupid thing at night. I like to like unwind by looking at Basketball Reference or whatever. And I sometimes will have a thought, and I'll be like, "Yo, RJ Barrett hasn't been good yet, but maybe he might be." Everyone, let's cross your fingers, and then I'll wake up to just people just being like, "You're an asshole. Kill yourself." I'm just like, "Yo, man, I made my bad. I didn't know what room I was in. Never again." And then the next night, I'm like, "Yeah, maybe Malcolm Brogdon isn't the savior of the Celtics." And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, no, the ones that would always bother me, and I don't even want to get into this topic, it's like waking up and being like, DeSantis is sending Venezuelan immigrants off to the Virgin Islands. You're just like, I'm not going to think about that bullshit. Like, it's not really basketball that bums me out. It's like waking up and seeing just like cops beating out somebody, someone in jail, in solitary confinement for the rest of their lives. You're just like, oh man, I just want to wake up and get a coffee before thinking about the tragedies of humanity. But sometimes the stuff that you wake up to is really funny. For example,
the mayor of Horntown, the new mayor of Horntown,
your man Doc Rivers.
Knicks legend Doc Rivers, man. What did he do now? I mean, he was such a great point guard. He's such a celebrated coach. Yeah.
Well, I got news for you, Quo. Doc Rivers was horny on Maine.
Oh, he pulled a Rambus.
They got into his likes.
They. You and your pronouns. Your generation and your pronouns.
They, the streets.
Right.
They got into his likes, and the man had been horny. He was Van Horny. He got into a bunch of porn. He was liking left and right. Like 8 of his last 9 likes, or 7 of his last 8 were porn, and they had stretched over a few days or something like that. Theory was that he didn't understand that likes were visible, that maybe they were similar to bookmarks. Maybe he thought he was using a burner account, which he probably has.
For sure.
I would guess that
Maybe.
almost every coach has burner accounts, or a lot of players do. You can also search via your own name, but if you're not someone who talks on it, then you probably have a burner.
Maybe. These guys, they're straight line guys. Like, all they think about is basketball, I think.
Well, I mean, Kevin Durant used burners until he just was like, wait a minute, I can just talk about this myself.
Well, he's a genius, so that's different.
But I just think that the temptation there, once you cross that Rubicon to saying, actually, I'm just going to engage with people myself, is like, right. I'm going to engage with them under a different name. I think Doc has a bunch of burner accounts? I don't really. I just don't really think he does. But that's one theory with him about why his likes were visible, that he thought he was using a different account.
Right, and when I say Durant's a genius, I mean he's a genius on the court, but he's like of a different generation, and he can extrapolate how to use Twitter in a way that Doc Rivers could never, unless Doc Rivers had an assistant set it up for him, and Doc was like, and it's like he misconstrued the like button as actually liking something, as opposed to signaling what his brand is, right? Like, it's not a like. People kind of like curate their worldview through attaching their name to different ideas, and whether that be something horny or not, like, it's okay if Doc is a horny guy. Why are we kink shaming this man? He's a doctor.
Yeah, I'm not kink shaming at all. I'm just saying the guy was horny on Maine. And also, we did see Daryl Morey. What was another one that he had liked or followed?
Was he horny?
I think he publicly followed like girls in yoga pants or something like that.
Yeah. Following an account is helpful because the feed comes into your feed, their feed. But it's also, people look at who you follow to see what you're thinking of. And yoga is a very healthy practice. pants are necessary in society. Whatever, some covering. You're good, Daryl.
I would also say, due to basketball just being a bit more progressive, specifically NBA basketball, people like laughed about Doc Rivers being busted, but it was more that he was an old dude who didn't know what he was doing and that he was horny.
Right. Everyone's
versus
like,
shaming him for like what the content was.
Right. Everyone was just like, that's not how you do it, buddy.
Yeah. And to be honest, it's like, you know, a lot of the links on there were like trans porn. And he didn't.
Fine.
I thought people were going to really, like, I thought it was going to get gross.
Right.
And then it didn't. People were generally like, all right, whatever you're into, dog.
That's my favorite
Cool.
performer, too. Just don't let everyone know that.
Yeah, it was more like, Doc, like, you know, we get that you're horny and you got your thing, but like, why don't you use the internet more subtly, my friend? I thought that was kind of a positive takeaway from that whole thing.
How do we know Nick Nurse is into feet? Did he say he was into feet? Rex Ryan, famously, football coach of the Jets, was asked one time.
I'm 100% sure that we just said he looks like a foot fetishist, and then it really took off from there.
Okay, because I bring up
No
this,
shaming. No shaming.
No. I bring up this Rex Ryan story because everyone knows this, but I'll just say it again. The people found out that his wife is a performer of the foot variety, and primarily, and it was a gotcha moment after during a press conference. Someone was like, "Hey, we found out who your wife is, and she's a performer of the foot variety. Do you care to comment?" And Rex is like, "Oh, I know." And everyone's like, "Good for you, Rex." He's just like, "I'm into it. I love my wife." You think I don't know that? I thought that was a boss move by a Jets coach. One of the few boss moves the Jets coaches have ever made.
No, I agree. Yeah. So, look, I have some issues with Doc, but none of them have to do with how Doc gets his rocks off.
Come on, he's seen it a million times before. He said doctor.
But so anyway, Doc was in the news for that. We can get more into my real issues with Doc down the line at some point. Mm-hmm. But we've still got a little basketball to talk about here. Mm-hmm. So less savory than Doc Rivers. There's been the behavior of is it Robert Sarver? Mm-hmm. I think it's Robert, right? Mm-hmm. Who is the owner of the Suns. And after, was it a Sports Illustrated article that came out?
Maybe so.
I think it was Sports Illustrated. But an article came out and documented like a lot of poor behavior by Sarver over the last few years. And he declared that it was all untrue and you know, slandered the writer who put the story together. And last week, after a lengthy NBA investigation, the NBA basically confirmed more or less everything that was in that story, that he had used the N-word several times in front of black employees, despite being told not to. He had a lot of sort of gross sexist comments that he made.
He dropped his pants in front of the team doctor.
And not Doc Rivers.
No. Not the mayor.
It was a pretty long indictment of just shitty behavior that really ran the gamut from like gross, creepy, awful, rich guy who thinks he's funny, but everyone else thinks this guy sucks. It really was like the full swath of like lousy boss behavior.
He's only 62, so he can't claim some like old, dusty, like old man stuff. 60's not that old.
No. Old enough to know better.
Yeah, dude.
But billionaire's gonna billionaire.
And people really got on Silver for his soft kind of response to it. I believe he fined him $30 million. He's not allowed to.
I thought it was 10, and then he's like banned for a year. That was my understanding.
Maybe so. I got to check. But banned for a year, which sucks for him because he has a good team. And people were really getting on Silver for that, especially after kicking out Sterling from the NBA. But Sarver's a very powerful man, and Sterling was kind of like a joke by that time and disliked by the rest of the NBA. Sarver like wields a bit of power, and also he's the boss of the commissioner. So Silver's in a kind of a pickle here, because he has to do what's right, but also he is employed by Sarver and the rest of the 29 owner groups and owners. And it's really difficult for him to be the cop here, because he has a role and Sarver's like, I'm paying you to do something. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If Sarver hadn't run afoul of the other owners in the way that Sterling did,
Right.
then it's easier for Silver to say, like,
You're out.
hey, boss.
Yeah.
But that said, that power dynamic certainly exists.
Yeah,
But
for
that
sure.
said, players also work for this league. And when you see guys like LeBron say this is not acceptable, when you see the head of the players union say this is not acceptable, then you got a real issue. Because they do work for him, and they are part of this larger establishment, and they're saying that's not good enough. You know, if we sit here and say on the outside, well, I don't know, he's an owner and he did this, that was bad behavior, a year seems okay. I'm not suggesting you are doing that. But the people who work for him, they have their opinion matters. Like, they are the ones who are like, wait a minute, we are part of this. We helped build this, and this guy is profiting off of our work. This guy owns, 3% of this league that we're building, that we have this idea for, and we are young black men, predominantly. And there's this guy who's using the N-word in front of his employees, and we are enriching his pockets, and he's earned billions off of our back. Like, fuck that. I think that is extremely valid as well.
I mean, they can do a number of things, right? The one that takes the longest time is the collective bargaining agreement and advocating for their in their benefit, but also like not playing in Phoenix, or maybe not playing games, right? Like, let's get real. The NBA is not so big that players, if they felt a certain way, would be like, we're not going to play these games, right? Like, the NBA isn't like this behemoth, or it's not Gravity. It just doesn't happen. These players have to play games. I don't think there's been any mention of any of the players union talking about something as extreme as that. I think the Suns are going to go out there and try to win as many games as possible, this year and the next year and the next year.
Yeah, I think, to your point, though, that if there was that kind of like collective action, I think you would see changes made.
Oh, for sure.
Oh shit! I'm looking out my window. I'm still recording the pod, and it's one of those bugs we're supposed to kill.
Oh, the lantern flies? Get it, man.
Yeah.
Blood.
Hold on.
Blood.
Hold on. I'm gonna try to kill it. I'm not sure I can get him. Can you hear me? I'm over by the window. I'm trying to kill the lantern.
Is it dead yet?
No, it's alive. It's gone.
Kill it.
Shit. Ah, damn it.
Oh, God. You let it get away?
No, I opened the window and it flew off.
Oh,
Man.
you could have had blood on your hands, man.
Sorry, guys. I tried. He was on the outside of the window. I opened the window to get him, and he flew off. I actually killed one the other day, though, so I do have at least some lanternfly blood on my hands.
They're so good looking, but they've
They're
been
beautiful.
They've been like, the PR around them has been so successful. Where I'm like, ew, and I'm like, oh, this is one of the most beautiful creatures I've seen today. But
They are short of like butterflies or dragonflies. Some of the most gorgeous insects, but I see them, I'm like, murder's on my mind.
Well, can we talk about
murder.
insect PR? Because bees growing up were just like, oh, I'm allergic, get rid of them, kill it. Now it's just like, oh no, these are the saviors of our planet. Take that bee sting like a champ, And also monarch butterflies, like, oh, actually, always good. But spiders. Growing up, spiders were kind of like scary. Kill them if you see them in the basement. Smack them with your slipper, whatever. Now it's just like, well, they're benevolent creatures. Like, just don't bother them. They actually maintain order down here. They're so Charlotte's Web. Let's go. Great PR.
What do you think about centipedes, though? Because centipedes have gotten better PR of late, but I see them on the wall. I'm like,
They're scary, man.
They're also hard to catch alive.
They're fast as hell.
They're fast. You kind of have to squish them.
They can crawl up your sleeve in a nanosecond.
Yeah, I feel bad because I know that they're predators and they'll eat mosquitoes and bugs I don't like.
Yeah.
But when they're running across my wall, I'm like, I can't just like let you go back to your hiding place.
And there's a lot of kind of
I feel
centipedes.
bad.
We're talking about
I feel
like the
bad.
water ones, right, that are in apartments.
Well, I'm talking about the long ones that run across the wall.
Yeah, with the huge legs that are super fast.
Yeah. And again, I
Good
think they
PR.
are predators and they're good, but I feel bad. I always have to just grab them.
Yeah. Nothing more horrifying
crickets
than
I save. Crickets I'll save.
Oh, crickets?
Yeah, they're cute and they jump around. They're really weirdly easy to catch.
But like grasshoppers are invasive, and like no one wants any of that. That's the locust, right?
Yeah, I don't want those. But crickets, I'll catch them, and they're very easy to hold in your hand and without hurting, and then you can just like toss them out the window.
Yeah, bug PR and plant PR. Like, give it up to the ones who are good at it, because grass has great PR. Touch grass, right? Like, everyone wants these beautiful lawns. It's a weed, right? Like, it's just not the weed we mind. I have a tree that is near my house, and some guy walked by. I was walking with someone, and he was a bit of a book reader, and he was like, that's a weed. I'm like, what are you talking about? That looks like a tree to me. It's just like, whatever you want to call it. But when it's small, we pick those. But when it's big, we just leave them in because the roots are too aggressive. I'm like, huh, you say tomato.
Like, hey, dork, beat it.
Beat it, dork. I'm going to eat these Brussels sprouts, or maybe I'm not going to eat these Brussels sprouts. But
Yeah, go read a book, nerd. I'm getting myself a nice Godfather hero.
But like, yeah, PR for lanternflies, not great.
I mean, I'm even here right now like,
I could have killed it.
man, I could have done a better job killing that goddamn lanternfly. We've been given our orders. It's just a green light on lanternflies. It's a green light on site.
Why are they invasive? Do they eat bugs that have better PR, or do they kill plants that have good PR?
I think they kill trees. I mean, even my little nephew was like, yeah, you got to kill those things. You see them, you kill them. Kill them on site.
I mean,
On site, green light.
trees don't need PR. Trees are pretty chill.
Yeah, trees are well represented, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, are we talking about a horny guy or a racist guy in the NBA?
Well,
or both? So what do you want? What fate do you think Sarver should accept?
I think it should be up to the players, to be honest. Like, obviously the owners are going to have some say about someone who's a owner of a team himself, or the governors, or whatever you want to call them, because they don't want to be drummed out for their own shitty opinions.
Yeah.
But I just think, like, if players are really serious about saying this guy can't own a team, if they collectively say that, then they can pressure him to get rid of him. If they said we're not going to play games because this guy is a racist, they would not lose public support. The NBA would have to get rid of him.
Maybe so.
Like,
I mean, they would have to do
They
something
would.
to affect it. Yeah. I mean, there's this going on in football. Like, Dan Snyder might be like the worst. Like in the Washington Commanders, I believe that's what they're called now. But like, how do you get rid of an owner of a business when they own it? Like, they own it. It belongs to them. They can misbehave and you can stop going there, or you may just not like it and you can stop going there, and then they would be
But
forced.
the NBA is different, right? Because there are like codes of conduct and things like that can force sales.
100%, yeah. Enforcing those is
Like
something
they're
that Silver
franchisees,
did.
right? It's not like
Yeah.
the Phoenix Suns are an independent, privately owned company in the sense of like a pizza spot across the street with like delicious, meat pies.
Yeah, but like if Sarver does his time, I don't know.
It's like a non-punishment though. Like, you can't be around for a year. You just have to watch the games on TV, and then he's just back. It's like that's nothing. The $10 million bucks to him is nothing. It's a total slap on the wrist for like behavior that clearly upset people. But again, my thing is this. If the players really cared, which I'm not saying they should or should not do, they would say, we're not going to play games until he's gone. But there hasn't been a groundswell of support for that. So my only takeaway is that the players aren't that passionate. They don't like him. They think it's too lenient. But they aren't saying, we're going to unlace our shoes and not play until this guy is gone. They care, but not deeply enough to do that, which I think is totally understandable and fine.
Yeah, because they also have their best interest in mind, right? Like, if I put myself in Mikal Bridges' shoes, his bright yellow shoes that look amazing, only those bright yellow shoes, I would say, like, yo, that's bad. If he's going to serve that punishment, okay, can I go back to doing what I do best? It's like, yes, play these games. It's like, cool, because I think I can win a championship this year. I'm like, yeah, that's a big deal. Like, you shouldn't be punished as well, Yeah,
but I also don't think it would come to that. I feel like if the players said, we feel this strongly that we're not going to show up to training camp if this guy is still an owner of a team, I think the league would say, this doesn't work for us from a PR standpoint.
I mean, it would be a long, drawn-out thing.
The guy who's
right?
been, I think it would take about 2 days.
No way. No, Sterling took longer than that.
All right, fine, it would take a week. But if the player's like, we're not doing the season because you have an owner that keeps saying the N-word, NBA's not winning that. They're saying, Sarver, you are out of here.
But I don't like punishment like this. I'm not a Sarver fan at all, and I'm not defending him, but this kind of punishment is what we've been talking about sucks this whole pod, right? Like, punish, do it. And I'm like, okay, that's what America does. And that's what this company, which is a deeply American company, probably should do. But I'm like...
But that's not real punishment, though. That's not incarceration. That's not like losing your livelihood. He's going to get like $2.5 billion for his franchise or something.
I mean, if it's case to case like that, then there's no law. Then it's like every person has its own situation. And if it comes down to that, just being like, I don't like people who read books, send them off. And it's like, ooh, this gets weird, right?
I don't know. I think talking about someone who's in a position of power who abuses that power is very different from talking about people who are at the very depths of society's ladder and dealing with the ramifications of that. Well, we could say that his behavior is informed by his social position in the same way that people who are extremely poor's behavior is informed by their social position. But ultimately, we're not even suggesting that this guy faces a real punishment. We're just saying that you have to sell this business that is part of this union that is this multi-billion-dollar company that you are damaging because you've been acting like a shithead for quite some time.
And he absolutely did act like a shithead. But then, this is where my argumentative part comes out. I'm like, all the NBA have been acting like a shithead for not letting high schoolers go right to the NBA. Like, why do they have to feed this NCAA, in my opinion, racist organization that you've had a handshake agreement with before they can make their own money? Like, they're adults at 18. Like, we celebrate Kobe Bryant and Kevin Garnett. Like, can't young men try their hand at this? And they may not succeed. There's a lot of players who don't work right out of high school. But to me, like, that has been a very egregious sin of the NBA for a while.
Oh, I'm with you. I don't really want to get into like whataboutism when it comes to Sarver because there are many things the NBA has done wrong. But I just think these are two different things, right? I mean, I think the NBA's rules that have forced guys who are good enough to be in the pros to play for free for a year is horseshit. I also think the fact that you can only sign with one team who has the rights to draft you is also horseshit. Like there are a lot of unfair barriers in the NBA. I'm just saying I don't think that applies to Sarver. I think we were talking about an imperfect league and an imperfect society, and I just don't think you say, well, if you're not going to fix this right now, or you haven't fixed this until this point, or this is still an issue, then Sarver is independent of that.
Well, I mean, he's
not independent of that. Like,
right.
I'm like,
I mean, I love whataboutism because it's context. I think it's a way for the right to demonize people, the extreme right to demonize people who put things into context, right? And that's just a way to diffuse a conversation, which works. You say whataboutism and everyone's like, oh, my bad, I don't want to be that guy. I'm like, no, put it into context. Some contexts are better than others. And maybe to your point, this context doesn't really work, but this league is full of stuff that I have issues with, as well as the behavior of some of these owners and coaches, but not Doc Rivers. That's cool. But, you know, like, if we're talking about the NBA, then nothing is a whataboutist thing. It's just the NBA.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's more of an yes and than a what about.
Sure.
Like in my
Sure,
opinion,
yeah.
Sarver shit sucks. Also, the draft sucks.
But isn't the draft
sucks.
more hurtful?
But what does it matter, right? I'm saying I don't think you say, like, well, let's put the tiers in order. And, like, have they been denying predominantly black athletes millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars by forcing them to go into a year of college ball? For sure. And that should be changed. But that doesn't mean that, like, they shouldn't try to force out Sarver if they wanted to.
Yeah, maybe I'm just talking about the ethical starting point for this corporation. Where do the 30 owners or ownership groups of the NBA and the players union start ethically and morally? Like, it's always shifting, and we're always trying to find the new water level, right? So that's just me trying to figure it out, being like, I agree with the punishment for Sarver, and I also agree it could be more, to be honest. Like, I think Silver was kind of lenient there, if he was even in charge with that decision. But I'm trying to find the moral beginning of what the NBA does, and I bring up the draft age thing because this week we have maybe a thought that turns back into a better situation for everybody.
The league is always hesitant to have teenagers coming in, people direct from high school, because in my opinion, they want the dual benefits of more time to scout guys against higher caliber talent, and also that a highly vaunted player who may not be a household name. We're not talking LeBrons or Zion, who everyone in basketball knows, but guys who are really like top prospects will go for a year to a big program and then kind of inherit the fan base of that school. If you've got a top 5 prospect in the country, no one knows who they are unless you follow high school basketball. I don't know who the top 5 prospects are. I know a name here or then, but like I don't know who they are. And I love basketball. But once they go for a year and then everyone starts paying attention around the league because they're going to be a high draft pick, then they come in with cachet and highlights and people can start drafting them. Yeah, RJ Barrett. Okay, this guy, he went to Duke. We saw him play here.
Well, before that, he was a 5-star recruit.
Right. But if he just gone from high school to the Knicks, even at that draft pick, he wouldn't have had the cachet of being...
He would not be a number 3 pick.
A player on... Yeah. Exactly. But if he wouldn't be a player on Duke, he wouldn't have the fan base of Duke that likes him and roots for him, etc. So all this to say, the NBA has been very resistant to the idea of the NCAA, or has been resistant to high schoolers coming in. But they are going to change it potentially.
Hopefully, yeah. Silver mentioned it.
They've been sort of veering that direction lately, especially in the way that they've started using the G League with Ignite to actually pay kids more money in this interim period. Like the top prospects can get paid reasonable money, more than typical G Leaguers, and then sort of be funneled, into the NBA. And
we're seeing the number 2 prospect after Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, already play a year in the G League. So like at that, I think he pushes kind of this conversation a bit, being like, we don't have to do this. Like he's kind of ready. Like we're taking an opportunity away from him, kind of.
I mean, Jalen Green played for them. Kuminga played for them. But those are the 2 and the 7 picks.
They worked out great. Those are good players. Yeah. proof of concept, like they don't have to go to Duke. Yeah, they don't even have to go to the G League, in my opinion. But I was hoping for a better product from the G League. I was hoping for more fanfare, better design, better ways to watch the games. But
I wonder what the idea behind Ignite was and doing that with G League. Was it experimenting with coming up with kind of a farm system, or was it just paving the way towards doing something like this?
That's a great question. I think more. I read it more of the first. What you said. I thought it was a great idea in theory, but sometimes these guys don't need it. Sometimes they do. Like, I think Kamingo was probably ready. Green was probably ready. Scoot looks last year. I'm looking at the stats now. 21, 7, and 5. He could probably be on the end of a bench in the NBA for sure.
I'm kind of into high schoolers adding that variance into the draft. I think it's more fun. Like, why not? Like, if the draft is going to be changed in a way where if you want, I was saying, if you really want to avoid, tanking, having high schoolers in there is a good incentive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is not something the NBA cannot adjust to. Like, of course, the argument, and I said Scoot's numbers, those are per 36. Per game, pretty good. 14, 5, and 4. Awesome player. I almost like him more than Wemby. That's another conversation for later. But the argument is, well, someone like Scoot would take the roster spot away from a Jamal Crawford or even like a Denzel Valentine, right? Like players who have earned the right to make a living, and just through speculation, just through potential, taking their opportunity kind of away. Monetarily and their dreams and aspirations and all that. And that's real too. I think NBA teams should expand rosters, but these guys are so rare and so valuable and so good. It's going to be a speculative league forever, I think. And shout out to players who still think they can play. I think they can too, but it's like Social Security, right? If you don't make it on the Knicks, then it's a young man's league.
I mean, to me, for every LeBron James or Kevin Durant or Zion, guys who should not have to go to college unless they want to, that they just they're too good to go there right away, and they deserve to have not only that at this point, like $10 million in the bank that they would get versus zero. For playing in college. I know college is trying to adjust so they can make some money here and there, but it's not the same kind of money we're talking about. But if they can do that, then they're also not only missing that first year, but their career could get cut short where they're missing a year when they make a ton of money. Yep. That 1 year really has huge ramifications on like when you get your next big contract, when you get your second extension. So like it's not just that. Like you get that $10 million, you get it a year later. The year that you're missing might be the one where you make 40. So like that year is not fair to guys who are elite prospects, and it robs them for much more than just that 1 year. It robs them of like a max year potentially in their early 30s or something. But what I was going to say was, it also isn't fair to guys like Travis Outlaw. He went like 23rd overall. Like maybe his family needed the money. And if he said, okay, if I go to school somewhere, I might be a top 10 pick. Like he probably would have been a high pick. He ended up being a decent pro.
Right.
But maybe his family needed the money.
Yeah.
I think you just got to give kids the choice.
Yeah. I mean, when you said like that 1 year, it's like, I immediately thought of Harry Giles, like coming out of high school. It's like, oh, he has the potential to be a top 5 player in the NBA. And at Duke, just ravaged by injuries, knees. Kings drafted him and didn't go anywhere. And I wonder if he had skipped that year at Duke, if these injuries would have happened anyway, he he could have made that real NBA rookie contract money, which is like not millions, but he may be in the millions because he was going to be a top 5 pick. And there's enough money to go around in the NBA. You know, I think the salary cap is also racist. Like, or the salary cap is not fair to the workers of the NBA, I think.
Yeah, I just don't care about the NBA's certainty. That they want to draft more accurately. That's just something that is just not a concern to me at all. Like, scout better then.
Yeah. Well, listen, this Luka kid, we don't know enough about him. We can't take him. It's like he plays all the way in Europe.
I mean, we talked about this in the only book you should read, The Joy of Basketball, where there was a section about the draft and busts and how players have viewed this as being racist. And Kwame Brown, who's been very vocal of late, but he made a point even back then. He was like, I was the poster child for bust because they wanted to use me to show that they shouldn't allow high schoolers to come into the league. And it was kind of the same thing with like Corleone Brown, where his name gets uttered so much as this cautionary tale. The guy still was in the NBA and just couldn't play.
Yep.
He went in the second round and then he wasn't good. But isn't that indicating that he got drafted where he should have gone and his career worked out the right way?
Yeah.
Like, no, if he'd gone to college, he would have been more ready for the pros and he would have stuck around. He would have had a pro career. Says who?
Yeah. To your point, like the whataboutis would be like, okay, for every Amari Stoudemire, there's these guys, Corleone Brown, who doesn't make it, Kwame Brown, who had a great career. Kwame did his damn thing. But I would say the fact that there is Amari Stoudemire is proof of concept. Go for it, everybody. It works. Look at Amari Stoudemire. It's like, well, what about KG and Kobe? I'm like, oh, everyone try this. Everyone try to be the next Kobe Bryant. Let's go.
So I misspoke. It was Corleone Young.
Corleone Young.
Yeah. And so he was drafted in 1998. And again, cited all the time as an example of why you should not take these guys. And it's like, well, some guys who were taken before him were Casey Shaw from Toledo, DeMarco Johnson from UNC Charlotte.
Right.
Like there were some guys like Jelani McCoy. He had a short career.
Oh,
there were some guys like, there are plenty of guys around him who did not play a lot of pro minutes. We're talking like a few. It was a pretty good draft though, to be honest.
Yeah,
but I'm like, Michael Oakandi was taken number 1, and he went to University of the Pacific.
Yeah. But, yeah, I just want to talk about high school and the NBA that did make it. We always talk about Kobe and KG, but, like, let's not forget Tracy McGrady, Al Harrington, Rashard Lewis, Darius Miles, Jermaine O'Neal. Like, it works. Gerald Green, LeBron James, Andrew Bynum. Like, let's go. It works.
Well, right. Who are the ones who didn't make it?
Wait, did Bynum?
Because Kwame Brown made it.
Oh, Kwame Brown was a great NBA player. Yeah.
I mean, Corleone Young did not make it. I mean, he played a total of 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. But as I said, Casey Shaw, who was drafted by the Sixers, a couple picks ahead of him, played 14 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Tyson Chandler, man. Like one of the best Knicks of all time, did not go to college.
I just find the whole thing about
Dwight Howard. Yeah.
You had Jonathan Bender who got hurt.
Still a good career, man. He was bouncing around the league for almost a decade, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Leon Smith didn't
Sean
work
Livingston,
out, but he was taken 29th.
Sebastian Telfair, Al Jefferson, your boy, Josh Smith, J.R. Smith. Like, let's go. Like, there's proof of concept here. There should be no debate. The only reason there was a one and done rule is like Mike Krzyzewski. And now that he's out of here, like we don't have to deal with it.
There weren't really that many flops at all. Like Deshaun Stevenson, like the track record of high schoolers is like phenomenally good.
It might be better than players who played in college, like Lou Williams, Andre Blatch had a career, Amir Johnson. Yo, man, come on, everyone just do this. I forgot about all of these guys. Kendrick Perkins didn't go to college.
Diop was a bust, but I mean, he still played.
He still played a bunch, man.
He still played 8,000 pro minutes.
Yeah, no, it's a go. But also there's a little bit of a conspiracy theory that they did this to make LeBron James happy. So it wasn't like they didn't do this out of the goodness of their heart. They made this a business decision because LeBron James famously would love to play on the same team as Bronny, his son. And if this rule would be implemented, it would take place in 2024, I believe, when LeBron James has an opt-out.
It's a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's a total coincidence, Andrew.
Good, right? And then if Bronny did not have to go to college, he'd become NBA eligible in 2024 as well. So, like, this all lines up. If LeBron had called the office wherever these decisions are made, being like, hey, I would love to play longer. I'm cool with retiring, but if I can play with my son, like, that would keep me in the league. How about you guys say 2024? And they'd be like, yeah, cool. We've been waiting to do this. Let's do this.
Or even if it's not the retirement part, it's the fact that he can escape his contract then.
Yeah, the opt-out.
So he could say, all right, well, look, if you take Bronny, you get Bron.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's what he said.
Which he's indicated this in the past, yeah. So I don't know if he'll honor that, but I would not be surprised if he really wants to play with his son. I mean, if a team, let's say the Grizzlies or someone's like, all right, we're gonna take Bronny. Let's see what happens. Do I think he'll join them? Yes,
I do. Yeah, me too.
I do too.
Yeah, it's gonna happen, and like Bronny's not necessarily like an NBA caliber prospect. There's reason to think that a team might take him in the second round, maybe, if you didn't have his name.
I mean, if you can get LeBron, does that turn into a first-round pick?
Absolutely. He turns into a top 10 pick, right? 5 to 10. I would start considering if I was the Thunder or the Grizzlies, and they have a really good kind of core going, I would consider Bronny at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right?
I mean, the Thunder, who knows what their timetable is, because we're still talking about another year from now, right?
Yeah,
But they might still be too young to get LeBron. But I mean, a team like the Heat,
Rockets?
like the Heat, that's a go.
The Heat's a go. I mean, Cleveland. Everyone's talking Cleveland. I mean, they might be too good.
Cleveland's a fucking go.
But they might be too good to have a pick in the lottery. They might not be in the lottery. New York City. Come on, Knicks.
But that is the catch, though, right?
That
if you're a lottery team, it might not be worth it. You're like, what if we get LeBron? And we're gonna blow a number 7 pick on his son, who we view as a second round talent. So LeBron will come here and play for a year and then say I'm out.
Yeah.
But if you're a team like, I mean, if you're a team like the Hawks, you're like, okay, let's do this. Yeah. We'll play LeBron some minutes. That's what we needed, though. If we get Trae Young and LeBron James, now we're cooking with gas.
Dude, insane. It would just be crazy.
Bulls, you do it in a fucking heartbeat.
Absolutely. There's all the top East teams. I mean, there's going to be teams on the outside looking in, and I hope no one gets hurt this year, but someone will get hurt, and one of these East teams will have a really tough season. And if they take LeBron and sit on a Kawhi or a Paul George like they did last year, amazing. LeBron is a gift that keeps on giving. He's gonna end his career with more drama than he began it with.
What would be the most annoying place? For me, it's the Wizards. He just follows MJ's footsteps and plays out
that team is bad.
A novelty retirement with a Wiz.
I mean, come on. What if it was the Celtics? I mean, they're too good to be in the lottery, but what if it was Utah?
No, they're tanking. They're not doing it.
Bronny James, the fourth overall pick.
If I just have to guess, I'm saying the Hornets and the Cavs would be my guesses for East Coast teams that would go for it.
What about the Kings in the West?
Kings would definitely do it, I think. And I think LeBron being actually, no.
I mean...
but he will do that, too, though. He will do that. He'll put it out.
Yep.
He'll say,
oh, man. Yeah,
there are certain teams that he's down to go, oh, the bug is back. Hold on.
Oh, kill it.
All right, what? I don't know how to do it. He's on the outside of the screen. I don't know how to get to him.
Open the screen and grab him and crush him between your fingers.
All right. I've opened up the window. He's on the other
Is it
side.
the same one? Do you think he's fucking with you? Is he taunting you?
He flew off again. I'm sorry.
Yo, he's straight up taunting you now, man.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. I tried to get him again. I could not get to him. He's just on the screen laughing at me. Oh, wait. He's back. But I can't get to him. I have to open the window, then get around the screen. And as soon as I move the screen, this little invasive guy is flying off. Now he's invading my head.
Why don't you just open your windows big, have him fly in, and murder him in your apartment?
All right, I'm going to open the window. Let's see what happens.
Watch out. They'll invade your apartment. They're invasive, man.
All right, the window is open. I'm trying
Alright.
to get him to come inside. I'm luring him into my lair.
He's like, what the fuck? The screen was right here. Here I go. There was a screen here a second ago. Oh, well, I'm going in.
Well, the other one just flew into my car, and I was just like, oh, thanks. That's a gimme.
How do you kill them, though? Do you do napkin, slipper, or your bare hand?
Oh, I just popped him with my bare hand. Speaking of which, I was at a Sichuan restaurant, a very delicious one.
Which one? Name names.
And I'm not going to name names.
No.
And there was a roach just like marching down the wall.
Oh, yeah,
Like
always.
very slowly. It just kind of like went right by your shoulder and just
Yeah.
kept going. And I saw it. And I was like, oh. I was like, do I kill this myself? And I was like, I don't know. I think that'd be a little weird. So I went back into the kitchen and spoke with a woman. I was like, hey, you got a big roach out there. And she's like, oh, okay. And she goes out there. And then she starts smashing it with her hand and then puts it on the ground and picks it up and carries it away. I was like, thought you'd have a more deft manner of getting rid of it. And everyone in the restaurant's turning and just seeing the woman just like smashing the roach on the wall with her hand.
Dude, it gets...
Anyway, I don't want to say, I feel like
Yeah, no,
restaurants have
no, I
vermin.
didn't know.
I don't want to use the name.
I didn't know it was going
bad.
there. I thought you were going to compliment their cooking.
The cooking was great. That's why I don't want to
cuisine.
badmouth them.
No, I don't mind roaches in a restaurant. Obviously, it can't be inside the food like what happened to me, but...
Yeah, that was a horror story.
Oh, yeah, I have not recovered. But yeah, I remember I went to a pizza spot and there was a giant roach in their basement dining room. I've said too much. But my friend, who doesn't get out much because she has kids and she also has an insane job, was just like, I'll handle this. And just like quickly remove that roach with like her napkin. And she's like, yeah, I don't want to ruin my night over this. And a few of the people at the table were trying to make a big deal out of it. And she was like, no, we're not doing that. It's just a roach. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of with that a little bit. But roaches, a terrible PR. Just the worst PR. They got to hire Caitlin Phillips.
Yeah, she could help them out a bit. They're no one's loving what they're up to.
No.
Mosquitoes, terrible PR.
Terrible PR. My least favorite. Yo, how are they going to invent pesticides that kill monarch butterflies and the insects that make delicious honey and not mosquitoes? Like the mosquitoes are back stronger than ever, but the monarch butterflies are like struggling.
It was a really long article. I want to say it was New York Times Magazine or the New Yorker. I don't read, so it's hard to know which one it was in.
Yeah.
But it was about how there are so many fewer bugs today than there used to be in the past.
Yeah, it's the pesticides.
And it was pesticides and global warming, sort of just like the full meltdown of these climates in which, bugs feed birds and birds feed other predators, and just this whole life cycle being interrupted by a lack of bugs.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, and it's very true. As a kid, I felt like there were bugs everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Like you'd drive down a highway and your car would just be like splattered with bugs all over the grill, the windshield. It was just constant. As a kid visiting like my grandparents in like rural areas, just bugs in your eyes and your nose. It was like, it's totally true.
Yeah.
There are so fewer bugs today.
Yeah. And it's always the same thing. It's like, well, we found out it was Monsanto and global warming for sure. But it's funny. Like I've tried to put at one point there was construction near my house. And I had so many roaches. It was a horror show. I was lucky enough to have cats, but I would come back from like a fine at a Christmas restaurant on cloud 9, and then I'd flip on the lights of my apartment, and I would see like 7 giant roaches, like on my floor and on the wall.
It is a very humbling feeling.
Terror, right? And I tried to kill them with like peppermint, like whatever. The cats took care of a couple of them, but I could hear them near my bed at night. It was just like construction in New York City is insane. But then I was thinking, like, to make myself frame them better, I was like, but what are they thinking when they see me? They're just like, yo, we just got evicted from our spot of like 40 years. Like, we don't know what you are. You're probably going to kill us. Maybe if we act crazy, like, you'll let us go. But instead, I'm like, whap, 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 whap.
I really won't step on a roach if I see him on the street. I'm like, live and let live.
Yeah, those can go, but like in your house, it should be the same way. But
yeah, the house, I can't say I catch and release roaches.
no, I catch and release mice though.
Yeah, same.
Those are adorable.
Yeah. I mean, if you got to kill them swiftly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No glue traps.
No, I can't kill those things. But then where do you put them?
No.
Where do you put them?
What, if you use a glue trap?
No. So I take a takeout container. I have clean takeout containers. I trap the roach in the clear takeout soup container, and I slide a piece of paper underneath it, so it's trapped in the. But then where do you put it? I always take it to the park, but then it's gonna get snatched up.
You talking about a rouse? Rouse? You talking about a
Rick Rouse?
mouse or
A mouse.
Rouse?
A mouse.
A mouse. Oh yeah, you can just let them go in the park, right?
I know, but then some owl will just like scoop it up and eat it. Those owls. Those New York City owls.
They're everywhere.
Well, like birds of prey will just eat it, or like a bigger mouse will eat. I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. He's like, yo, I was chilling with my whole family behind that wall. Now I'm in a park next to dudes selling Propecia.
Mice, roaches, roaches. Chinese lantern bugs. Well, like, glad we got to the bottom of that.
Another perfect spot.
I love cookies.
Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.